Welcome to another five-star conversation where we dive deep into the journeys of hospitality's most influential leaders. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Rodger Powell, who's a dynamic and entrepreneurial force in the hotel and tourism industry. With a career spanning over 30 years, Rodger has held CEO and C-suite roles across 3 continents, shaping the future of hospitality, tourism, and destination marketing. His experience is unmatched, having led everything from accommodation chains to destination branding businesses and technology companies. In 2005, Rodger launched THSA Hotel Advisors, which is now recognised as a leading hotel advisory and asset management business in Australasia. With his team's combined 200 years of experience and over 400 successful assignments under their belt, THSA is a trusted name offering straight-talking, evidence-based advice to some of the largest hotel owners, developers, and investors in the region. Rodger is not just a strategic catalyst for innovation with an exceptional ability to inspire others. He distills complex ideas and drives meaningful change. Today, we'll explore his unique career journey, the insights he's gained from working across the full spectrum of hospitality, and his vision for the future. So welcome, Rodger. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Brendon. It's always quite fascinating to be introduced as a leader and hear all those accolades and nice words. I'm often reminded of the Monty Python movie, and I think perhaps I'm just a very naughty boy. And it's interesting how different people's careers shape where they get to. In particular, I think back to the start of my career, I was picking up glasses and posters and mess in the beer garden when I was 7 years old. But
Rodger, how were you working in beer gardens at 7?
family business.
Family business, yeah, of course.
No one gets to sleep in on Saturday morning. I made lots of changes in my early career when other people, other of my colleagues and contemporaries today had very stable careers with one company, and I just didn't really settle into one thing. And that has actually turned out, and it left. I remember being worried and thinking, gee, this might not be good for my career. But as it turns out, as is the nature of life and the universe,
yes,
it's worked out incredibly well for me because it's given me this diversity of experience that allows us to do the work we do today.
That is surprising. I think I mentioned you before. Steve Jobs gave an announcement speech to a Stanford class, and he talked about his experience and how he dropped out of classes at university and took up calligraphy and a few other classes. And he said if he hadn't have done that, then the Mac basically wouldn't have had multiple fonts. It just would have been a single font. It probably wouldn't even been sans serif. It would have been something pretty boring. So it is interesting how those sliding doors moment change our lives. Did you choose hospitality or did it choose you? It sounds like obviously you grew up in the business, so you know what you're getting yourself into.
Well, it was a family business, and my father didn't want any of us to work in the hospitality business, in the hotel.
Interesting.
He was in it with his brothers, and they all had real jobs. And so, we were all dutifully dispatched to university to become lawyers and doctors.
Yep.
I don't think in the end any of us graduated from university. We were definitely of a mindset to do anything but hospitality. And I had a couple of starts. I was an apprentice carpenter, an apprentice and a butcher. I became a trades butcher, different things in different directions, and ended up in Townsville on a long trip looking for some work, and applied for a job with a hospitality company, and I've never left since. That was when I was 20, and it was a management cadetship for a small resort company. Cadetship was modelled on the European hotel schools at the time, and quite structured. I've never done anything else. I've never thought about doing anything else. While there's been little diversions into hospitality tech and destination marketing and businesses that service hotels, I've nonetheless stayed in the hotel game, and today our business is all about hotels and hotel owners and hotel investors and bankers and funders and hotel performance and that stretches not just from big box hotels, but it's motels and holiday parks and even restaurants and bars and those sort of things. So all that encompassing envelope of hospitality. And really, it was that background that's given us the ability to do that. And I think
Yes.
it gives us. There's good things about all those different elements of hospitality. There are things that the pub guys do really, really well. They do everyday high quality food and beverage at a profit incredibly well.
Yep.
There's things that the big luxury hoteliers do really, really well in terms of discreet service and intimate service and everything else in between. I love the backpacker segment and the way they manage. You have a close look at some of those businesses and you see these shared bunk rooms. You think, oh, well, that's probably not for me, but you look at it from a business perspective, they're getting $400 a night for the room. So, the ability to cross-pollinate those different businesses and provide perspective and
Mm,
commentary and things for owners and investors to think about is, I think, today very helpful.
most definitely. So, from your career point of view, obviously you started as that young trainee based on the European model. I think from previous guests who came up, there was not necessarily a degree in hotel management at that time. I think the best you could get was a diploma, and that literally involved a little bit of obviously class time, almost like an apprenticeship, really, where you did some class time and then you worked full time at a property, going through all facets. So you did that, and then how did your career progress?
Yeah, it's interesting where the opportunities come from. And probably to your point specifically, there were no degree courses.
Mm,
And there was the university courses didn't have the flexibility that they had today to be able to create something.
yeah.
My course was very much like an apprenticeship, had to do every single role in the hotel as the Swiss hotel school
Mm,
did, but we didn't have the formal classroom stuff, as you say. I,
okay.
I did a diploma of food and beverage management, actually in New Zealand at the time, running a number of accommodation hotels for Lion Breweries then, but got a food and beverage diploma there. In terms of where my career went, like everybody else, probably my ambition was probably greater than my capability for most of my career, and I was very keen from the end of that. Believed at the end of that course that I should be an assistant manager, and I became an assistant manager very quickly. Still working for I had gone back to work for the Queensland company and became the youngest licensee, youngest hotel manager in Queensland at 23 of a very, very small establishment, 23 rooms, restaurant, cafe, fish and chip shop, public bar, lounge bar,
Okay.
in a resort location. And it was just great experience. And as is the nature of careers, I really enjoyed that, and I was quite happy to stay with that company. And the owner died unexpectedly and suddenly. And my boss at the time said, "Time for you to get out of here, son." And he sent me off to Sydney. In those days, not even faxes. So he sent me off with a letter of introduction to a fellow named Tony Young, who ran a
Yes.
then called I think it was called Boulevard Hotels at the time, but Southern Pacific Hotels, and that started my career in larger hotels. And that was quite a big switch from sort of small resorts and pubs, because I'd worked for Lion Nathan in New Zealand with looking after pubs. In fact, one of my pubs had 11 rooms. It's the smallest place I've managed. I went from that to the Conrad Hilton on the Gold Coast, the pre-opening team there, which was 622 rooms, biggest hotel in Australia at the time,
Mm.
and a 5-star hotel and an international brand. And God help me, I had to learn to use a computer, which I remember the people from the computer company doing the training and installation spoke to the executive assistant manager who I reported to and said, "Look, this guy's holding everybody back, and if he can't catch up very quickly, we're just going to have to dump him." So, for someone that later ended up owning a share of a technology company, that was a bit of a shock. Just trying to learn how to do all these things that you had done with a book and a pencil in a computer was quite fascinating. But, that gave me again a lot of opportunities. I think I might have mentioned previously that hotel opened in November 1985. I
Wow.
think that was 3 months after the IBM XT personal computer was launched in Australia.
Yep.
And the computer department bought a bunch of them. And so on my downtime and off time, I learnt from the computer room guys how to use a PC. And that just gave me a bunch of opportunities. You know, I can remember we went very quickly within days of opening, we ripped out 8 telex machines and replaced them with fax machines, which had also come out at the same time. And so it was at the time, looking back, of quite dramatic change that we today take for granted.
Mm.
But the Hilton opportunity gave me the opportunity to go overseas, work in Southeast Asia and then in America. And then I got my first diversion. I felt that I wasn't moving quickly enough. I was told I was doing a great job, and if I was really, really good and really lucky, I'd get a executive assistant manager's job in 2 years' time. And 2 years at the time sounded like 3.5 lifetimes to me. So,
Yep.
I was offered a job with the computer company, and that was a big learning curve and lots of travel. It was a very exciting time in the hospitality systems business worldwide. And again, that's one of the things that, in retrospect, contributed so much to what we do today.
Mm.
I was out on the road in training and installing front office computer systems in hotels all around the world. So, and those installations at that time used to take about 6 weeks.
Yes.
So you would get this in-depth snapshot of how a hotel ran, because you had to work with everybody.
Yep.
From the general manager to the yard people. They all had some requirement of the PMS system that you had to understand and work out how to put it into the system and teach them how to use it. And so you got this snapshot of how a hotel ran, and then another one 6 weeks later, and another one, and pretty soon you had a good understanding of how 30 completely different kinds of hotels in different countries worked. So it was marvelous experience in terms of how to communicate with lots of different people, lots of different countries, cultures, and job skills, and across lots of different jobs. So, while I had done my cadetship, I had never really worked, for example, as a waiter for any great length of time.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
enough waiting to get to be able to move on to the next job,
Yes.
and getting a really good understanding of what restaurant supervisors did and needed, and all that sort of thing really helps today, and particularly when you're working with owners to design hotels or refurbish hotels, or how to get better performance out of their hotels. Having that understanding of what really goes on, what the people on the front line dealing with customers are dealing with, is really important. And I think the other real benefit of all of that has been, I rarely lose sight of the customer in anything we're talking about, which is very easy in my game today. You're often
Yep.
talking about return on investment and the financial performance and the cash flow and the forecasts and all that sort of stuff. Very easy to get engrossed in that and lose sight of the customer. So keeping the customer front of the mind and making sure that drives everything we think about
Yep.
has been really useful.
Was that the same computer company that, when you were going through the training, said that you were holding everyone back?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And I ended up buying one of their divisions. At the time, there was a transition from again, it was the transition from old big box hotel computers, IBM System 36s and
Yes.
38s and PDP 11s
And AS400s if you were a big property.
big boxes, big heavy
Yep.
pieces of metal, to PC based wide area networks. And
Yeah.
the company that we were working for had made a decision to go into that PC LAN environment, and
Mm.
most of us had been working in this big box environment, but also working in very big hotels. And
Yep.
at that time, the biggest hotels were attached to casinos, and they had the biggest
Yes.
budgets. And the casino operators didn't want to change to a wide area network or a LAN based. And in fact, they had massive databases. The reason they had such big boxes was huge amounts of data that they were
Mm.
processing. So So we saw the opportunity to take that division of the business they were going to close down and keep it going and modernise it. And we, to your point, we transitioned to the AS400 and continued working with clients who, because of the nature of their business, really stretched us. So I think we were stretched in terms of design and capability to deliver systems that, again, were incredibly customer facing and customer centric. And
Yeah.
so that too was very good. But yes, I was the guy who was incapable, ended up owning the company.
And what was the company, Roger?
Well, the company that sold us the system was a company called Logistics.
Yes.
So in
Yep.
Australia, we had systems in it, the then Regent, for example, and
Yep.
Hayman Island and the Conrad on the Gold Coast. But yes, Logistics, and we renamed it Systems Resource Group when we moved to Reno, Nevada, where all the gaming clients were, and then subsequently sold in the very early 1990s. And I came back to Australia to manage hotels again,
Okay.
partly because I wanted to come home at the time.
It's interesting. Logistics. I think we put a logistics system into the Novotel Darling Harbour when it opened in '89.
That's correct. That was
Yep.
the landmark system, I think, which was
Correct. Yes. And it also went into the Hyatt Regency Sydney, which was the project was the Corn Exchange Hotel
yes.
from that era. So I did the PMS recommendations for both of those properties.
There you go.
And Frank O'Donoghue, who I was working for at Horwitz, then went on to actually work with logistics and I think became country manager or something after that. So it's a small world. And I went on to work for a PMS vendor here in Australia and did a similar thing to yourself, not 6 weeks, but normally 2 weeks at a time. And it was definitely an experience working in, going from a hotel to hotel to hotel. You saw good things, you saw bad things. You learnt a lot. It was a good opportunity to experience a number of hotel openings without going through all of the pain of a hotel opening. You were dealing with one component, but you got to see the stress of the GM. It was really interesting, actually. I found it fascinating too. Some GMs were thoroughly organised and had their team in place. And I won't mention names, but that was one hotel. The GM had a mobile phone and everything like that. I went to the next hotel. The GM didn't have a mobile. He asked if he could borrow mine. And him and his wife were vacuuming the carpet, at 9 o'clock the night before the
Yes.
hotel opened, so it's sort of this huge contrast. He was so disorganized that, whereas the other guy, it was interesting, as you said.
It's character building.
It is. So, Roger, can you tell us a memorable experience from the early part of your career that sort of cemented your love for hospitality?
Yeah, that was definitely very early. Probably the part of my traineeship where I learned to cook.
Yeah, okay.
I had been an apprentice chef before that, and had a love for cooking that I like most chefs, got from my mother and my grandmother.
Yep.
And I could cook, so I thought that the kitchen was probably the right place for me. Turned out that the kitchen is really typically in hotels the place for a good kitchen manager rather than a good cook. But I had the good fortune to train under a couple of really quite well-travelled chefs. One English guy who had trained at Dorchester, one a Hungarian guy who had worked in Japan and Korea. So I learned a lot of different techniques, and I particularly in one of those that learned. The chef was a master at saving the day's scraps to make great staff meals, and so
Okay.
learning early in my career to do things like cook and eat the part of the prawn that we usually threw away, the head, for example. So it just sort of affected my thinking about cooking and cookery. I got a really good understanding of the food and beverage part of the business. I enjoyed the transition to the food and beverage front of house,
Yep.
and I just had a lot of fun. For me, it was like acting every day. It was like I never had to think about whether I wanted to go to work or not. It was just I was eager to get there, and it made me do all the things I was uncomfortable with at the time, talk to people and meet new people. And in fact, one of the funniest things that happened to me in my career happened at that same time. I just made the transition to front of house. I think I was about 21 and very green. And we had a really quite big and quite expensive hens party, bachelorette party in the restaurant, and the restaurant was full of 30-something women with evening dresses on, and they were all on to party, and wound down the restaurant. Nearly everyone had left, and I had one table ladies left, and they wanted coffee. And they wanted Irish coffees, and we did silver service Irish coffee. And I can and these ladies were lovely. They were drunk and they were chatty and they were funny, and which didn't escape me at 21. I can remember trying to chat to them while I was pouring the coffee from a coffee pot with a long silver spout. And I noticed that the lady opposite me was laughing at me, and I couldn't kind of work out. I was immediately uncomfortable. I looked down, and I had been so intent on looking at the cleavage of the lady I was serving that the coffee that I was pouring had overflowed the cup, overflowed the saucer, and was pouring onto the table. And they were laughing at me because of my both that and because of my embarrassment. So I cringed about that for days.
Yes, I love it. Great experience. Roger, I suppose an inspiration question. Who is it or what is it that inspires you and gives you passion for what you do?
Oh, gee. In terms of what we do today, I think it's the people that I meet and get to deal with. We have great clients, people who, again, themselves have very different backgrounds, different stories. You know, when you're in the business of building $100 million hotel, you're not without substance. And meeting those people and not just working with them and for them, but becoming acquainted with them and friends with them. You know, one of my longtime clients, who I now consider a friend, recently went to his 70th birthday party. So things like that really do inspire me. And I find that when I work with those people, I still learn something every single day. I learn something new. So, and it's not one particular person. It's the collective group of them, and they're young people and older people and people in construction, people in finance, and yeah, it's them. It's them generally that inspires me to and makes me love what we're doing.
So that's great, Roger. Roger, one of the things I always like to ask guests before they come on is what is one of your favourite sayings? And you had a number actually, and I think you said they all came from your father, but perfect is the enemy of good was the one that we chose. Tell us a little bit more about that. Why does that resonate with you, and what does that mean to you?
It does, particularly in the hotel space, because so much of what we do in hotels is driven by precision and perfection. And you think particularly about cookery, it has to be right. And you think about, for example, banquet food, or every single one of those individual items has to look the same, be perfect. You know, the experience is driven by the presentation of food. So we have a perfection mindset, and we learn that very, very early on. But often when you get to senior roles, that striving perfection can get in the way of delivering anything at all. And you've got to know not when to deliver something because it's not perfect, but know when you're delivering something that's good enough and is going to achieve the result. And because you move on from perfection, you can get to several other things that need to be done at the same time. And again, I think back to when I very first started, and we were, the company bought shabby hotels and did them up. And my boss at the time his saying was, "It doesn't have to be good; it just has to look good." And his example always was, if we were reskinning the restaurant, we might have in the design that we wanted a mahogany wall panel, but we could use pine and stain it mahogany, and it would look just good. The customer wasn't examining the wall paneling; they were looking at the food. The wall paneling was just setting the tone. So it was that whole thing about that has to look right, has to feel right, but doesn't have to be mahogany to and with mahogany's expense to deliver the end result. And so those things are always and we have all these absolute skills in hotels. Revenue management, whether someone is checked into a room or not. which side of the plate the knife and fork goes on. But in fact, the guest is going to probably be much happier if they've got a friendly waiter who's just put the cutlery where they can get it, but has been waxed lyrical about the food or made some other kind of personal connection that was relevant to the guest than they will about the table being perfectly set, and more so today than ever before. So that's kind of what that means to me. It's certainly not a justification to do anything poorly.
Yes.
About knowing when something is done well enough to be able to progress. And that doesn't even mean you might not come back to make it perfect later, but often that striving for perfection in our space can consume, the last 5% consumes 25% of the time and effort.
Yeah, yeah. I think in any business, you can pour over a project or a campaign, and if you strive to get it to 100%, you'll never complete it. And as you said, there are things that if you get it to 80%, then that's probably pretty good.
Yeah.
Another question then is, I suppose on advice you've been given throughout your career, what do you consider to be that best piece of advice you've ever been given that stayed with you?
Again, encapsulated another saying: an ounce of persistence is worth a pound of talent. I never really felt I had much talent at anything, but I certainly was very persistent, and I've seen that repeatedly. Don't give up. People that just keep at it. The people that work harder than the others, and particularly that. And that was certainly the case for me in sport. I just didn't have the talent, but I knew if I worked really hard, if I was fitter, I could still hold my place on the team. And I think that's the same for the hotel business, because again, every hotelier is made up of an amalgam of all these different bits of experience, and just powering on through it when things are tough gets you to that point where you've got enough in your amalgam of experience to deliver the result you needed. And the hotel business is tough, and there's times when in people's career when you seem to hit a wall, you end up working with a more senior colleague who you don't get on with. You've got a hotel where the guests are unhappy for some reason that's beyond your control, and things are tough. And I always remember Winston Churchill's famous saying of, if you're going through hell, keep on going. So those things align for me. Just got to tough it out, work out how to deal with it, and keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard that Winston Churchill saying. There you go.
Mm.
We'll move on to tech, and obviously, given your background in tech and the broad experience you've had, which I've learned today is even broader. I didn't realize that you'd done butchery as well. I knew that you'd done some work in carpentry, but butchery and cooking. So the depth of experience is amazing. When we talk about technology in the hospitality industry, it's not only a perception. I think we were rated by who was it, McKenzie or someone, put hospitality just in front of hunting in our use of technology. So we've got this reputation that we're behind. Why do you think that is, Rodger? And what do you think we can do about it?
Yeah, it's something that really, really bothers me, and I've touched on this at industry events quite frequently, particularly in the context of, in the late 1980s, 90% of online transactions were in travel, hotels, airlines, and cars. Today, it's a small percentage, and it's dominated by retail.
Yeah.
And what bothers me most about all of that is, the volume of travel business has only grown in that time.
That's true.
And our customers' everyday expectation of technology is driven by their experience of the best purchasing experience they have. So if you look at Amazon or booking.com in our space, the travel space, or the Iconic in clothing, just a myriad of retail consumer interfaces, they're so far superior. Their interaction with big data, their recognition of consumer patterns and trends, so that they can present more and more to the customer what the customer wants and is more likely to buy. And what do we do still today? We present a hotel room, a picture of a bed in a hotel room. it totally commoditizes the product. It does the individual hotel no favor at all, and it doesn't give the customer any opportunity to make a decision based on their true interests.
Yep.
It doesn't allow them to upsell themselves. And you think even about the airline experience, and the airline and rental car experience is very comparable because their tech systems were bigger boxes, started before ours. Their legacy systems are far worse than ours, and
Okay.
still on the consumer interface end, via their apps and what have you, they're still delivering a better consumer experience, and to the point where there's tech innovations, for example, that have come out of aviation that we've already forgotten about. We think of them as every day, but we haven't got there yet in the hotel business. And for example, check-in. We all used to go and line up, and who would want to go and line up to check in at the airport anymore? And the fact that you can check in from the app on your phone and select your seat and book your Uber to the airport and so on and so forth. You've got all these choices. You've got, even for the seat you're buying, you've got a choice of prices depending on the options you want to go with it.
Yep.
And it's there and then. Okay, well, I want this to be a flexible fare that I can change. Boom. All right, you pay another $200, but there you've sold yourself. And it's those sorts of things. It's the iconic retail experience where the person buying is increasingly, they've been looking at black clothes for a while, so don't show them a grey tracksuit pant. Show them a black tracksuit pant when they're looking at tracksuit pants. You already know what sizes they've been looking at. Show them that size. And if you're connected to big data, you know that people that are looking for tracksuit pants are also looking to refinance their mortgage. So what do those people have in common, and how can we deliver them a perfectly curated and tailored experience so they're going to not only satisfy themselves the best and quickest, but they're going to give you the most of their money that you can get. So it infuriates me when I wait 10 minutes in a line to check in at a hotel, and when I still have to. The only place in the world today where you have to present a physical card anymore is a hotel reception desk. Things like that. It's a different world now, and we have not yet adapted to it, and we're not yet capitalizing on the opportunities that it provides. And I sort of reflect on why that is. And I think a large part is due to the change in hotel ownership structure.
Okay.
20 years ago, when a large percentage of the big hotels were owned by hotel operators before they went on their asset light path, they were making the investment decisions about the technology. And if they collectively made a decision for their whole portfolio that, well, we're going to introduce an app that allows the guest to check in remotely, well, it's a very easy execution piece. Today, when they don't own any hotels and they've got to get owner approval for capital expenditure, a lot of the things that particularly don't necessarily deliver tangible revenue, like things that improve customer service or customer experience, or particularly those things that have a less than tangible value, it's hard to convince an owner to invest $250,000 on new tech, and the owners themselves have all kinds of different motivations. So, $250,000 of additional capex might be fine in 5 years' time, but tech still continues to move so quickly that the customer experience expectation is going to be changed and long gone by the time you get to that 5-year period. So I think that structure is one thing. Where I see that being addressed is more and more of the hotel operators are going to cloud-based PMS systems, and the PMS is still the linkage point of all those.
It is, yeah.
But they're investing more and more in their apps. So while there's not much of it particularly available yet, all the brands are talking about some of those airline type facilities being able to check in remotely, being able to get your key delivered to your phone, a digital key, so you can avoid the front desk experience altogether. They have to sort out the credit card thing, so that you can download your credit card from Apple Pay either remotely or at the front desk. But the notion of having to carry a credit card in case you need it at a hotel just seems to me to be ridiculous. So and the ability then for the app linked to the loyalty program to have a better understanding of what this guest needs. So that if he's checked in remotely and you know that he always orders 2 bottles of water, well, instead of waiting for them to order them, you have them delivered to the room. And if he doesn't use them, or you've lost nothing, but you've anticipated a guest need. The ability to do things like allow people to order room service before they get to the hotel. You think you're on late arrival from the airport on a flight. You want to have something to eat because you're hungry.
Yeah.
The hotel restaurant might be closing at 10 o'clock and
Mm.
you're 5 till 10:15. Your ability, once you've checked in remotely, to also order the room service for delivery at 10:15, that sort of stuff is going to be important and make a difference. And ability as to how you spend your loyalty points, how the linkage to the loyalty profile allows hotels to better service guests, but also better recognise guests, genuinely treat guests who are more important as more important, rather than thank you for being a member of our loyalty program. Oh, seriously, how exciting is that? So I think there's a long, long way to go. I think the ownership structure of the software, the more that software transitions to SaaS, the better that opportunity is.
Yeah.
But there's still a way to go. I mean, there's still operators out there prescribing premise-based hardware for premise-based PMS systems, and that to me is just inconsiderate of owners' precious capital. Why would you recommend to someone that they use precious upfront capital for hard systems that have got a very short life? And
Mm.
when you can transfer that cost to the P&L and have software as a service that's updated in real time all the time, so you always got the latest software and the latest benefits and advantages of the software. So that was a long answer to your question, but
No, that's a good answer, and there's a couple of points on that. I mean, you referenced the airline industry, and I think there's, we need to be careful. Obviously, we just don't take everything that the airline industry does
no.
and try and fit it into hotels, but they have done some very good things, as you said, streamlining that whole check-in process. And I find, as the consumer in that situation, if it's convenient and easy for me, why wouldn't I? And I think too often I actually work with a company that does mobile check-in. I've been working with them for 4 years. That the very first 2 years was all about trying to convince hoteliers that guests do not want to stand at front desk and register. If they can do it before they arrive and then just collect the key, great. If they can bypass collecting the key and get on their phone, even better. But as you said, we've got a long way to go. There's a lot of hotels that need to upgrade their door lock hardware, but we are working towards it. The other thing that the airline industry has taught us that we're not there yet, my understanding is that something like 37% of revenue from an airline is actually incidental revenue, as you said. It's that extra money for, choosing your seat, extra legroom and stuff like that. In hotels, we are still very much in the commodity. We've got a bed to sell you, take it or leave it. We're not sort of upselling as we should. So I think we do have a long way to go. And I think SaaS will definitely make a difference. With some of the solutions though, nobody wants to be first, and I appreciate that. But once you've got a few people, then they can realize that some of these systems, like the mobile check-in one, it's not a cost, it can be a revenue center, because you can do what the airline are doing and offer guests, would you like to check in a bit earlier? Would you like to check out later? Too often we give those early check-ins away with no monetary reward from the hotel's point of view. Guest will front up, they front up early and it's like, do you have a room available to? Oh, we do. Whereas if you pre-check them in, you can actually add a monetary value to that. Even little things like, I know hotels that there was a hotel on the Gold Coast. The GM told me once that they don't charge for car parking, but they were offering $10 valet parking and were making $5 or $6 a month just from that.
Mm-hmm.
Because guests would say, great, no worries, I'll just leave my car with you. They could have parked it. When I stayed there, I parked it. Having been a porter, I don't want anybody driving my high car. I know too well what can happen to it. But all those little things, he said, it was just, it was money for jam, really, at the end of the day. But guests like the convenience of literally pulling up in the driveway and then handing the keys over. So,
Plus, I think the other thing that would apply well in the hotel space, to your point, is allowing guests to tell you what they think something's worth. So, what's your price, guest, for a late checkout till 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
I'm happy to pay $40. No, we're busy. Oh, we're not busy. Yeah, we'll take the $40. But you're not putting a fixed fee on it that the guest is maybe not willing to pay. You're just getting whatever you can
True.
on the day. Yeah, I talked when Qantas first introduced the remote check-in. I talked to someone very senior at Qantas, and I said, "Well, this must have saved you a fortune in labour because you've got none of these people doing bags, none of these people doing check-ins, and none of the angst of the check-in you've
Yeah.
put there." And the response really surprised me because it was, yes, it saved some labour in that department, but it allowed us to focus more effort, spend more on improving the experience in the high touch point areas of the business. And
Yeah.
they were specific about, at the time, improving cabin service. And my observation is that the airlines have all improved their cabin service
Yeah.
because they know it's the high touch points. And I've been thinking, well, if you bypass the front desk in a hotel, what do you do? Well, maybe it's when you deliver room service, or maybe it's just you do a better job of concierge information, local personal touch information services. Maybe it's the hotels that kind of impress me are the ones that call you on your mobile phone after you've checked in, or WhatsApp message you just to make sure everything's okay and to let you know that there's a quick, easy way you can let them know if something's not okay. So having the extra time to do that,
Yes.
the result is saving labour where it's not important to the guest. And,
Yep.
checking in I would say, is not important to most guests most of the time,
It
especially
can be,
corporate
actually.
guests. I just want to get to the room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, yep, a lot of potential there.
A lot of potential. And to your point, in Asia, it's common to receive a call, half an hour after you've checked in and they will just check, is everything okay? And if you need us, we're here. And from a labor point of view, we don't have that luxury in Australia. But if we did, I've got colleagues that have software that allows for that calling to be done. And
Mm,
some of the things that are uncovered during that process can basically change the trajectory of the guest stay. So if you call and the guest is like, well, I'm not happy, you can do something about it half an hour after they've checked in rather than them spending 2 nights getting
sure.
really irritated about the situation, and it just plays on their mind and they write a scathing review when they leave. So yeah, I think that is the challenge, I think, of a modern hotelier is how do we implement the technology but maintain the high touch? Because I think Gartner said, or they're predicting by 2020, I think they were saying by 2025, but it could be 2030, 85% of interactions in a hotel will not involve a human.
Mm,
And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. We can't change the fact that technology is progressing so much. What do we do, to your point, to make sure that those interactions that are delivered are the best?
mm,
And talking to general manager of a premium property just recently, they are going to go to room service via an app,
mm,
which I first thought, as a premium property, I don't know. But his point was, and it's a good point, everybody calls at 7 o'clock and you've got one person or two people trying to deal with 5 phone calls at once. It doesn't work.
mm,
If you're using an app, everybody can do it at the same time. We already know statistically if people are using apps that they're likely to purchase more because they do it at their leisure. And if you do it correctly, working with Shangri-La, we've got about a 28% increase in average check. But what
wow.
they are planning to do is to use that team to make sure that the in-room dining experience is fantastic. It will be a proper trolley. It will be clothed. There'll be cutlery. It'll be great. That'll be something you can really talk about. Whereas the phone experience, as to your point about check-in, it's not that big deal. But if you deliver an in-room experience, then I think you can really wow. Yeah, at first I thought, don't know about that, but as I thought about it more, I think they're on the right track to actually make that high touch experience even better for the guest.
There's some apps that do that a lot better than other, and it's particularly around the options, because if you sit in a room service order taker's office, almost every order has some guest modification. I want mayonnaise instead of ketchup. I'd like a gluten-free bun. I don't want tomato on my hamburger.
Yep.
Can I get tomato sauce with my scrambled eggs in the morning? It's all those little things that it's easy enough to order a hamburger, having read the description of the hamburger. But I think you're right. And the opportunity to merchandise that stuff much better, because you're on an app, you can put a range of photographs of the item
Mm.
that are appealing and attractive compared to just a menu item on a traditional menu when you're phone ordering. All of these things, I think, once someone invests in the software, and you invest at the hotel end in constantly maintaining it, so that when the chef puts a new dish on, you know that the likely options with that are those. We better include those is important. And look, I'm told by people using those apps that the tipping option also results in, even though it's tipping in advance, it also results in greater tips for the staff. So that's got to be a good thing as well.
That is a good thing, because that's the only concern, often that yes, staff are losing. If those solutions are done well, as a minimum, we see around about a 19% increase in average check. If they've done really well, it's up to 32%.
Wow.
But it also, what it can mean too is you've got that integration. The guest places the order, it goes directly to the kitchen, reduces the time frame. All too often, what you see, and I won't mention the hotel, but I've seen a hotel here where when I stayed, the staff are actually delivering a meal to a guest whilst actually taking an order for another guest. And it just doesn't work really well, because they were literally, I was getting in the lift as they were getting out of the lift, and you could see them like this, pushing the trolley, trying to, oh, you'd like a hamburger? Great, thank you, bye. They're not upselling because they don't have the time. She didn't have a notepad with her from what I could see. So, she has to remember, right, room 102, hamburger, with ketchup.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
difficult, just difficult.
Yep. Yep. Lots of opportunity.
Yeah, there is. On that point, Roger, so if we look, I suppose, 10 years from now, how do you think hotels will change? And what do you think we need to do to sort of make that transition easier?
The numbers where they have been done, comparing the performance of lifestyle hotels to same segment,
Yeah.
same market traditional hotels, shows very clearly that lifestyle hotels are performing better, delivering better profit.
Yeah.
And there's a really diverse collection of reasons from that, right from smaller capital costs with slightly smaller rooms, and that whole focus on art and lifestyle well-being, being in a hotel where you feel good because the style is commensurate with your style, as opposed to being in a traditional hotel brand with brand standard cookie cutter rooms. That was a valuable asset in the 1970s and 80s, when hotels were less consistent and less reputable. I remember
Mm.
in the 1980s, the number one concern of guests was cleanliness.
Yes.
Today it's security, and cleanliness, for example, in the Australian market, is just expected. In
Yep.
some South American places, cleanliness is still, on guests' minds. But as the world morphs, the guest expectation changes. And I think this whole emergence of lifestyle hotels will continue. And I think the lifestyle brands will become the mainstream traditional brands. There'll
Yep.
be still room for those brands that, those traditional brands, especially in luxury, that re-energize themselves, make themselves more approachable, less sort of stuffy. And there's good examples of luxury hotel brands in particular that are doing that. And even the sort of the slight departures, like the Sofitel being the art, the lifestyle version of a Sofitel.
Yep.
That's really quite distinct and clear. And yet, brands like the Hoxton, for example, and the Mondrian and the Kimpton, and they also go incredibly well because of their artistic nature, their room for self-expression. So I think, firstly, those types of hotels will grow consistently and dominate the market over time, and
Mm.
that is likely to have a positive impact on construction costs, so likely to make investment more viable. I think the other thing that will change, just because it will have to, is this whole issue we were talking about before of where the touch points are.
Yeah.
There's going to be less and less tolerance for and less room for unengaged connection between the guest and staff. Someone just going through the routine of, would you like fries with that, is not going to be acceptable to the customer.
Yeah.
It's increasingly going to be the person wanting to have a friendly chat as part of the thing they've got to get done. So if it's the check-in or the delivery of the meal at the table, they're going to want an engaging interaction with that staff member, not just a perfunctory delivery of and delivery of the required service.
Mm.
So I think we're going to have to invest more in people. We're going to have to treat people better, educate them better. We're going to have to create a sense of, particularly in Australia, a sense of industry being a reputable place to work, being a
Yes.
fun place to work, not being something that you do when you can't get any other kind of job. And we're going to have to build on our hospitality roots, particularly out of Europe, where people have lifetime careers in hospitality and multi-generational careers in hospitality. I'm not sure that we can achieve that, but we've got to transition to somewhere between where we are now and
Yeah.
that place, because that's what's our competition, and that's we're going to have to match it if we want to. We'll have required travel, domestic travel, that sort of thing. We'll get anyway,
Yeah.
but travel where there's a choice, I think, will involve a reputation for high touch,
Yeah.
high interpersonal connection.
I would agree. And that's probably one of my biggest concerns. I mean, I wear sort of a technology hat, and I think we can deal with the technology. One of the things, as you said, in our industry, we've don't have a reputation that a hospitality, job is a career. It's often something that you do it whilst you're going through university, and there are some people who then get hooked and stay. But unfortunately, even I might get the numbers wrong, but the percentage of students that have gone through a hospitality course that stay in hospitality, it's only, I think, a quarter of them or something these days.
Mm.
Somebody was telling me that staff that come out of those degrees are actually highly sought after by luxury car showrooms and stuff like that.
Luxury retail, yep.
Luxury retail, because they've been
Luxury
given all
goods.
the skills. Yeah, we need to change the perception of our industry, and I think probably treat staff better as well, and let them know that and part of this, the reason for this actual podcast is to highlight to the younger generation, the people on here have actually had long established careers in hospitality, and look at the depth and look at what they've been able to achieve and the travel that they've been able to achieve and everything like that. So there is a career in hospitality. So
Nearly 50 years for me, and remembering that I started picking up glasses. Well, you could say that's in a family business, that doesn't count. But at 12, I was working in a restaurant, washing dishes, working for someone else, earning
yeah.
my own money that I didn't want my parents to have anything to do with. And so it is still an industry that, irrespective of education, you can be very successful in if you're committed to it.
100%. Yes, yes. And that is a good point. It's a people industry. So if you like dealing with people, if you like making people happy and looking after them, then you can go a long way.
It's a business that needs characters, needs people with personalities and
Yeah.
valuable.
Even more so. If we implement more technology, then I think the people side of the business needs to be even stronger, because they won't have the trend, as you said now. And nobody, I think, signed up to be a receptionist to actually go through that transactional side. It's because they like dealing with people. If you take away the transaction and let the guest do that before they arrive, then it is, to me, a true interaction. So you can let the person shine, let their
Yeah,
personality come through. So that's powerful.
interesting. I saw something recently where it identified that 2% of our industry were over 40 years old.
Well,
And that to me is not a good thing.
it's
There's no
interesting.
balance in our community, in our businesses. And again, I think of some of the best experiences I've had overseas have been, you know, 70, 80-year-old waiters have been working in the same place for their whole life,
Yeah.
passionate about their food, who understand guests well, who know how to read the guests and deliver the experience that guest needs.
Yeah.
We need that. So we've somehow got to get over this hurdle.
And I think there's so much to be learned. So you just think, you as a 12-year-old coming in and being able to learn from somebody who's been doing it for 50 years, that education piece is missing. As you said, if there's only 2% of our industry that's over 40, that's that's pretty scary, actually.
That's probably all the people in management. So
Yes.
not all the people working in mine jobs.
Yep, very true, very true. As we get ready to wrap up, Rodger, the last question I always like to ask is, what advice would you give somebody who's just starting out in their hospitality career?
Uh, Yes. Well, that's a tough time because typically you're young and you've got lots of other distractions and lots of other things on your mind, and often, in particular, your friends are out having a gay old time while you're working. My advice is just stick at it. It's that same thing, persistence. If there's things you like about the industry, focus on those and just keep at it, because you will ultimately be successful. The people that can relate to other people, whether it's guests or colleagues or superiors or juniors in your business, people with those communication skills are ultimately successful.
Mm.
And then you get to a point where suddenly your career is open to. I've worked on 4 continents. I can't even think of how many countries. I've worked in everything: caravan parks, motels, hotels, pubs, restaurants, luxury hotels, casinos, the whole works
Yep.
in really, really exciting different environments. And you get to do things that other people just never get to do. And look, if that's not a criticism of those people either. If you're a person that wants a very, very stable environment, and then a different career is good for you. But if you want a bit of vibrance and excitement in your life, then you can get that out of the hotel industry. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And looking at your career, as you said, often take those opportunities as they arise, because it's not until you get to where you are now and you look back and you think it was the choices that you made at that point in time that have shaped you into who you are now and given you that sort of such a broad depth of experience that you can do what you do and do it well with a passion. So,
Yes, that's probably actually that translates into a good piece of advice, which is there are no wrong choices. Just do make the choice at the time, and then do it passionately, and you'll end up in a good place. It might not be where you thought you were going to be, but you'll end up being in a good place.
yeah. Yeah, a number of my guests have always said, if there is an opportunity, take it. Put your hand up. Be honest that may not have the skills, and let them know that you're going to need to be trained, but you're more than willing to take that opportunity.
I
And
think that's, I
it's
think
amazing
that's
what
very good
happens.
advice. Very good advice.
Yeah, Rodger, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been good fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodger.